The kettle's boiled, Vic.
Great. Perfect timing. Just a dash of milk for me, please, mate.
Here you go. Shall we get started then?
Have you ever woken up on a Sunday morning and said, I'm never drinking again, and then found yourself waving $50 at a barman by happy hour?
Are you wondering why everyone else can stop at 1 while you head to a dodgy after-party with a weird bloke called Disco Dave? If so, it might be time to take a deeper look at your relationship with your reliable social crutch, alcohol.
On each episode, we'll investigate our own dysfunctional dealings with booze and find out if it's possible to stop this deeply ingrained habit before things get too messy.
Yep, we're going to open up a shame shed of humiliating drinking stories to help you understand why waking up from a booze coma each weekend with a kebab sticking out of your top pocket might actually be negatively impacting your health.
Hamish and I are here to delve into what it's like being sober, an unwanted warts and all look into why giving up those cheeky pints or putting down those mummy wines will make you feel happier, help your anxiety and mental health, and turn you into the most sparkly, authentic version of you.
Won't that mean I become boring though, Vic?
Well, Hamish, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm Victoria Vanstone.
I'm Hamish Adams-Cairns.
And this is Sober Awkward.
On November 21st of 2024, Bethany Clarke lost her best friend, Simone White. The childhood friends had been travelling through Laos when they checked into the Nana backpack hostel and were served free shots that contained methanol, a tasteless, odourless and deadly substance that had been used as a cheaper alternative to alcohol. Simone was one of 6 tourists who would end up losing their lives as a result of the shots served on that night, including the 2 Australian teenagers, Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones. Bethany is determined to warn others about the dangers of methanol so as to avoid the needless loss of life that has so tragically impacted hers. Welcome to the podcast, Bethany Clarke.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that we have to speak, and I imagine many of your conversations are around an incredibly sad and traumatic and tragic event. I'm sorry that is the way that our lives have come together, Bethany.
Yes, I know, but I suppose we've got to talk about these things, otherwise nothing ever changes. So here we go.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very conscious of the fact that this is a story that you have told and will continue to tell a lot. And I know that it's sort of difficult to relive these kinds of stories over and over again. So part of me is not wanting to delve too far into the details. It is 7:30 in the morning on a Friday, Bethany, so I feel conscious of that. So I very much want to focus on the future and the message you're trying to get across. But with that being said, we also have to cover some of the story because your telling of the story and the sort of horrors of the story are such an effective way to share the message. So I sort of want to dip our toe into the story, but not get too far into it.
Yeah.
But what struck me first about your story was that it felt so close to home. You know, I travelled to Laos when I was 19,
really?
As thousands of Brits and Aussies do. I was young, naive. My drinking was probably the most reckless of any time in my life, particularly in vow and the tubing, which I know you've also done. And nothing awful happened to me. And Simone and you were 28. Simone was a lawyer. You were only passing through Laos for a few days. And the amount that you drank that night was not a huge amount, in comparison. So I guess my first questions would be around your awareness of the dangers of drinking at that time. Were you aware of what methanol was or that this kind of poisoning was going on? Or were you just like any other travelling passing through Laos?
My knowledge was that methanol was within things like antifreeze, and I may have vaguely heard of methanol poisoning years before, but I would have assumed that would just be somebody drinking homemade alcohol in a very, very poor country and maybe brewing something in their kitchen. I never would have thought that I would be drinking that, and I didn't know anything about the symptoms or anything. I knew the words, but I didn't know the context or anything about it. So basically, I didn't really know what it was, and I never would have put 2 and 2 together at all. It was that our friend was with us and he managed to put everything together, tie all our symptoms together. So had he not been there, I don't know if we'd be having this conversation, to be honest.
Free shots to get you into a hostel or to get you into a bar or to generate an atmosphere at the start of a night are not uncommon. I've certainly said yes to strangers offering me drinks hundreds of thousands of times, probably. Was that something that was common on that particular trip, traveling through that part of the world? Were you doing that fairly regularly?
I mean, I've been traveling with Simone when we did a big backpacking trip when we were 20. We did a 6 week long trip around Southeast Asia and even China and all of that. So we had obviously been to hostels and accepted drinks before and never really had a problem. So yeah, the sign was there, the sign up every night between 8 and 10. You could have whiskey or vodka shots, and there seemed to be no restriction on how many you could have. So yeah, I didn't think anything of it really. I mean, yeah, we've accepted free shots and free drinks many a time. We had 5 or 6 in there, which we were diluting with Sprite, but I remember just tasting a little bit of it, just a little bit of Sprite in there, and I could just tell that it was quite weak. And I thought, oh, that's unusual. I mean, to be fair, you'd normally water spirits down if you were in like an all-inclusive or something like that. So I suppose I just thought it's probably because they're watering it down. And yeah, I had no idea that methanol was tasteless, odorless. So I had no reason to suspect any particular problem with that.
So were the particular shots that night all vodka?
Yeah, but our male friend decided to have a whiskey shot, but we actually managed to get a picture of what we drank. So the first drinks that we had, and you can see in quite clearly that the whiskey that was served is black. And I'm not a whiskey drinker, and it wasn't until my mum pointed it out that she was like, actually, that shouldn't be that colour. So I was actually sent some correspondence from the hostel over Facebook Messenger. So they sent me CCTV, they sent me the bottles that we should have drunk from, and you can clearly see that the bottles that they're claiming that we drank from, the whiskey is like a light brown. So yeah, it's obvious that they weren't serving what they said they were serving.
I think because of films, we assume when someone drinks something poisonous that, they immediately hold their throat and collapse to the floor.
Yeah,
and that is not at all the reality for what happened to you guys on that night. I heard you say, it wasn't even a big night in terms of it wasn't a hustling, bustling hostel with thousands of people there bouncing off the walls. So when did you first get an inkling that you weren't feeling quite right? Because you actually called it a night fairly early that night, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So we'd only recently got there, and I was quite tired. I wasn't sure if it was jet lag. We have been drinking all day, right? So we've done the tubing, and I think that also meant that our symptoms were potentially put off for a bit of time. So we have a drink between 8 and 10. I decided to go to bed at about 10:30. But yeah, just felt really fatigued. But I do anyway after drinking, so I didn't really put two and two together. The others actually went for some more drinks and then came back at about midnight. And obviously I didn't wake up when they got back. But the following morning, so we're talking about 12 hours after we had the drinks, we all got up and just thought, something's not quite right. So we just felt quite weak, uncoordinated, very fatigued, no appetite, which was quite a strange one. Because normally in the morning, if you're hungover, you'd be like, oh, I want to eat something. But there was just absolutely no drive for me to want to eat anything that morning. And just as I was coming down the stairs, I'm just feeling really off balance. It's basically like you've been drugged, I suppose. Not that I've really experienced that either, but yeah, it was just unlike any other sensation or feeling that I've had before.
Did you bump into the other people that were there that night over the course of the next morning? Was there a conversation in the hostel of like, none of us are feeling great, or was it just your little troop of three?
Just us three, and we had a tour that we pre-booked, so we were literally just straight out the door at 8:30 in the morning, because we did meet up with another one of our friends that we'd met. She's the Dutch backpacker. She came on that tour with us, and during that kayaking experience, she was able to kayak us, even though she'd had the drinks. And I was thinking at the time, that's strange, isn't it, that you're fine and our other male friend was also fine and was paddling Simone around. It seemed to be maybe that those 2 extra drinks that they'd had after the methanol-laced drinks seemed to have an effect of pushing back the time that they started to become unwell. So, yeah, I don't know. My symptoms kicked in at the same time as Simone, where they were just a little bit delayed. And then once we were in that private hospital having treatment, we then heard from this Dutch backpacker that she was struggling a bit. And we said, you ought to come to the same hospital. And she did. Because she actually tried to go to Van Vieng Hospital and they were like, no, you haven't got methanol poisoning, go home. So it was just, They just had no idea what they were dealing with.
And did Simone feel the same as you? Were you guys talking like, a lack of coordination is obviously not an obvious hangover trait? Was she feeling very much like, this ain't a hangover? Or when did I know you mentioned on that kayaking trip, you guys were literally just lying on the floor of the kayak, looking up, unable to do anything or move all that much. At what point were you like, this is not a hangover, this is something more serious?
I know Simone did say to her other friend, "This is the worst hangover I've ever had," and she was someone who actually never had hangovers, so she obviously didn't deduce that it was anything else. But what I would say is that your brain doesn't function normally, so it is almost like having Alzheimer's. You just can't think about anything. No higher level thinking, literally just what you're doing right now. So I'm going to eat this bit of toast. Like, it's just so basic what we were able to talk about even. I just remember having conversations that were just nothing. I'm tired, I'm going to sit down. Okay, yeah, I'm going to do that too. There was no big conversations that day, but she didn't say that she had any vision loss, anything else. She just seemed to have very similar symptoms other than the fact that she was vomiting and we weren't. I suppose I kind of put that down to partly the alcohol initially, because obviously she did have a little bit more than me as well. And then the following day when we were on the minibus, she was being sick, and I again just thought, oh, it could be motion sickness. Yeah, and obviously my brain wasn't able to tie everything together because my brain wasn't working. Where our other friend, his brain did seem to work a bit better because he said to the driver, "Can you take us to a hospital?" So he managed to actually get us to both of those different hospitals. I would never have done that. And I think the pattern that we're seeing is that people just tend to sleep it off. So they just go to bed and think, oh, I'll be fine. But that hasn't worked for anyone. You need to access treatment straight away. So you can see it with the couple that died in Vietnam. They just said to their mates, "No, we're not going to go to hospital. We're just going to sleep it off," even though they were advised to go.
And they never woke up. They were found in the hostel. Was it that couple?
No, it wasn't a hostel. It was like homestay. I think they were looking after
Yeah.
it. And yeah, unfortunately, the restaurant that served them the limoncello is actually still open. So
Yes. And am I right in thinking Nana's Backpackers closed and is now trying to reopen under a different name?
yes, although we did try to
Yeah.
sabotage that. So we're hoping that they're not going to be able to reopen with the coverage that the BBC and
Yeah.
various media outlets gave it. And yeah, I mean, we'll probably just try and create some social media content soon to sort of reach out to people in the area and sort of say, can somebody go there and see if this place is open? Because we did have a few people that sent us footage when the place was being done up so that we could give it to the BBC and, have the evidence.
I think one of the things that's so scary about this is not only it affects your brain in a way that you can't think straight, but also because methanol poisoning, at least in my world, and I work in addiction and alcohol and like very much this whole industry, it's just uncommon. I never would have woken up feeling ill and thought methanol. And I guess that is part of the problem and part of the messaging that we're trying to share here. So let's talk about methanol itself for a minute. So we mentioned at the start, it's odorless, it's colorless, it's flammable, it's used in industrial and household products like fuel, paint strippers, antifreeze you mentioned, windshield cleaning fluids. It's a flipping chemical, it shouldn't be anywhere near a drink. But for some reason, for I guess money-saving reasons, it is put in drinks as a cheaper alternative to alcohol. What have you learned about methanol? Obviously it's a bizarre substance that has now affected your life in a horrific way. What have you learned about it since this day that we all need to know about?
I suppose that the different symptoms that can come up in that it's similar to a hangover, but you've got those red flags of the vision loss, the loss of appetite, the breathlessness as well, which Simone started experiencing 24 hours later. And I suppose the window of time is so different that it can start to affect you. So I actually spoke to somebody yesterday who was at Nana's back in February 2024. And he said that because he hadn't eaten anything before and didn't drink any more ethanol-based drinks afterwards, his symptoms did seem to sort of kick in pretty quickly. And yeah, he found himself sort of not really very conscious. And so it just shows you it's kind of been going on for a long time. And I think even so many people now have reached out to me telling me about their experiences, various things that have happened in Bali within the beach clubs there. So it's on a grand scale. And I don't think we realise, because people themselves don't realise until they hear about these symptoms and they're like, actually, maybe that was. And people also don't want to talk about it in the public domain because they think they're going to be judged. And So it's difficult. Yeah, I've learned a bit, but I'd say I would like to know more, really, because we still don't really understand why Simone died. We have the same amount to drink, so I'm presuming that the concentration of whatever she had in terms of methanol content must have been higher in some way. I don't really get it. And they keep saying, toxicologists say, oh, it could be metabolism, it could be to do with what you've eaten before, blah, blah, blah. But we ate before, and she had two ethanol-based drinks after me, which you presume would have helped, but it didn't. So I don't really have any answers for Simone's mum as to why I'm not dead. Do you know what I mean? It is a bit strange. We've got no explanation.
Is that something you struggle with? The sort of the guilt of being that survivor's guilt that we hear a lot about?
I think so, and that's partly why I'm doing what I'm doing as well, to try and spread awareness, because I just think that it's the right thing to do, given that I'm still here and able to share that message, and Simone's not, and 5 other people died over the course of those 2 nights, so we owe it to them as well. I mean, some of them were so young.
And it's not only you, the public, that don't know much about methanol, but frighteningly, even you went to hospitals and they didn't have a clue what it was. They're telling you that it's probably food poisoning, or they send people away. What was that experience like?
Diabolical. Yeah, horrendous. So we got to that hospital, I think, at about 3:30, and our male friend went straight in, and Simone and I were just waiting outside, because again, we didn't understand why we were there, didn't understand the severity of what was going on. We just thought, it's probably a hangover. We don't want to be seen as being too over the top. You know how women can come across as a bit sort of hysterical and maybe would be taken seriously. So we didn't go in. And probably an hour passed, and I thought, he's not come out, so it's obviously something serious. So I went in to see what was going on with him. He started on an IV, which is IV fluids, and possibly some anti-sickness. And initially I said to them, look, I don't really want to start treatment unless you know what this is and what are we actually being treated for. And they just said food poisoning. And I said, well, we all have different diets. I'm vegan, they're not. We would have all eaten different things. So I was pretty sure it wasn't that, but they had no other differentials in their head. So it was only until when Simone came in at about 5:30-ish. She came in much later than me as well, because she didn't see the point of going there. Yeah, she started gasping for air at about 8:30, so 24 hours later. And that's when I suppose, what on earth is going on here? Yeah, we had no idea. So he then got on his phone and found a private hospital, which we managed to get to, and that was about 27 hours after the drinks. And then they started Simone on hemodialysis, and then she had some brain surgery, which apparently wasn't even the right thing to do, according to the methanol poisoning expert. He said, well, actually, that would have never made any difference, because the brain is already swollen, there's nothing, the damage is done, but it just shows up on the scan later. So it was highly traumatic, as you can imagine. And then obviously I was in contact with Sue the whole time, who had to come over and switch her life support off, because we'd waited for her to die naturally, which is what they wanted us to do. But it would have taken so long because her heart was still so strong. So we waited 3 or 4 days for her to die naturally, and it just wasn't happening. And sometimes we'd go and her blood pressure would be higher, and we'd think, well, you can't hold us here indefinitely, And obviously we were traumatized and paranoid about the country in general, and that, our friend was saying to me, oh, do you think the water's safe? We were just going nuts. So we needed to get out of there. Yeah, mentally we were not in a good place at all, and couldn't really sleep properly. Sue turned Simone's life support off on the 21st of November. Took about 3 attempts because of various issues. There was a backup ventilator and a tube that needed to be taken out, which wasn't explained to her because they were Buddhist and they didn't want to get too involved because they didn't want to end life.
Yeah.
So once that was done, we left that day, all on the same flight, luckily. And just been trying to process the trauma ever since, really.
From the methanol expert that you've spoken to, the brain surgery was the wrong call, and it was 27 or so hours before you got the help that you needed or got to the right institution. Is there a sense of, if you think you've drunk methanol, if we'd got to Simone 2 hours after she drunk it, this conversation would be happening. Is that time frame imperative?
Absolutely. And I think had we known about the symptoms and the progression of it, and we still wanted to drink those drinks, which we wouldn't have done, but had we drunk those drinks anyway, I guess we would have had this in mind. We need to have some duty-free ethanol on hand. We can drink that and then get ourselves to a hospital to prevent the formic acid and formaldehyde getting around our system and damaging our organs and stuff. That's what we probably would have done because, we would have known to take duty-free. We would have known that breathlessness was a really bad sign. I think with the progression of it though, it was very much like a hangover. So, and this is why I'm very much towards avoidance of drinking spirits abroad rather than give it a go and drink some methanol. I think it's just too risky because you may not be cognitively aware enough that you're unwell, which we weren't. So that's why I'm basically just saying steer clear. And if you're going to drink anything you want to drink, you can drink beer because that's usually like canned. If it's in a can, no one can tamper with that. And even a bottle, if you check that the seal is intact and it's a well-known sort of brand of beer, then that's safe. But it's difficult to think about the what ifs because given how many people have become unwell from this and how many people have died in the past, more really should have been done to have prevented Simone's death and the 5 other tourist deaths, and then the 2 deaths that in Vietnam literally a month later. But what can we do? It's happened. We can't take it back. So
I've always found it quite confusing for people that don't know that drinking ethanol after drinking methanol is kind of a good thing, like that can help, even though obviously you then feel drunk and then you're even more unaware of why you're feeling the way you're feeling. But that seems to be the way that chemical responds.
Yeah, and there's a group on Facebook called Just Don't Drink Spirits in Bali, which is run by a guy called Colin, and he's literally coached so many people who think they've been poisoned into getting some good quality ethanol. He's literally on the phone to them through the night, like, keep drinking it, mate, keep drinking it. We've got to get you back to Perth or get you back to Australia. And that's basically because they don't really want to treat you or they don't know how to treat you in Asia generally. So that's why he kind of says to them, if you can get back, then you're going to get better care. He just says, just stay drunk, basically. It's the only way, the only way sometimes.
A lot of our listeners are, in particularly mums, and a lot of their fears, and I'm obviously stereotyping here, but the ones that reach out to us say that, that one of their big fears is that their kids will drink in the same way that they drunk. And, inevitably when they travel, that is when anxiety is at its absolute rocket high. What was that phone call like that you had to make to your best mate's mum? I know initially you're saying, we don't think it's that bad and we're not feeling great, but we're in hospital, don't worry. How did you navigate that phone call and breaking that news as it got more serious?
Yeah, initially it was just a text, as you said. The phone call that I had to make later was about the brain surgery, and I'd obviously known that the risk of her getting through a brain surgery when she was already so unwell would be very slim. So yeah, obviously I had to call her, but I did actually call my dad first, and we had a 3-way conversation where I was explaining what was happening, and my dad was listening in, and I'd already told him so that he could offer a few words. I mean, what can you even say in that situation?
Yeah.
But I suppose it was worse for me knowing that I was kind of on my own having that call. So to have my dad just in the background was nicer for me. But yeah, just horrible phone call, and I couldn't even believe that I was even saying those words. It was just so surreal. It didn't feel like it was actually happening. It was like, am I in a nightmare? No, I'm not. How am I going to get through the day? And it was literally about just getting through the next hour, getting through the next day. You couldn't think about anything more than that. And then obviously all the media coverage started happening, and that just seemed to make things even worse, But yeah, that phone call was awful, and waiting for her to come over and be with us. And once she was finally with us, I suppose to an extent, I was a bit relieved because it was just too much. It was just too overwhelming to be dealing with myself and Simone, not really being well enough, to be honest, to be able to handle all those things going on. Yeah, it was just horrendous.
I can only imagine. The media coverage aspect of it, I was obviously a Brit living in Australia, it was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. And it felt, the good thing about media coverage is you hope that it speeds up the pressure on a country to find who did it, like who was responsible for this, and like let's get this cleared away.
Yeah.
That is not what's happened. You know, the people that worked at Nana's, I think, escaped to Vietnam, was it? Then did you get sent a photo of all these bottles outside Nana's that had been washed?
You've done your research,
I mean, just atrocious. And I guess, you know, the reason for that being Laos is hugely reliant on tourism. Australia and England are a big part of that. So, you know, let's downplay the story so people still want to travel here. And I can remember lots of the Vox Pops that the BBC did were with other, you know, travellers in their 20s going, are you still going to stay in Laos? Like, oh yeah, we're going to drink beer now.
Yeah.
It felt very political. How do you feel about the fact that there's been no real conclusion to the story? There's no real, like, these were the culprits. I mean, the hostel's closed, but there's no blame to put anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's some proposed charges, but they're really nothing to do with what's actually happened. And as I say, people are reaching out all the time, telling me more information. You know, I spoke to a bartender who'd worked there before, and he was telling me how they use different bottles to the Tiger. So we know for sure that for years they've been doing this. Yeah, it's just frustrating that for years people have been really unwell, but it's only until they killed 6 people that we managed to actually address what's going on to some extent. But yeah, these people just seem to be able to get away with it, and they're living new lives now. And obviously, my whole life's been turned upside down. 5 other families' lives have been turned upside down, and then there's the wider network of people involved as well. So yeah, it's really not good enough. And the fact that we're giving them aid money, I mean, the amount of aid money Australia are giving them is beyond what the UK gives them. But yeah, we're not even able to get some answers. It's just insulting, really.
I spent a lot of time interviewing people about grief. People talk about the different stages of grief. I know, you know, we're less than a year away since Simone died. Where are you in that whole process? You know, is it anger? Are there days when you're feeling depressed? Are there days when it's sort of lighting the fire for spreading this message? How are you today?
I think it comes in waves, and it's not really linear. So I think one day you could be feeling angry and the next day something else. So it is a bit like that. Yeah, a lot of the time, because I've been so busy trying to do this campaigning, that I probably haven't really entered a lot of those stages, to be honest. But for me, it's kind of trying to keep her memory alive, trying to make her famous in her own right. You know, it's not the way I would have wanted it to be for her, but unfortunately, it's the way it's going to have to be, because she wouldn't want anyone else dying as a result of this. And it's just not getting enough attention worldwide, really. And that's great. It's great that Ashley King set up her petition in Canada to get methanol poisoning awareness into schools and into airports, just the same as my petition that covers the UK and Australia for the same things. Because I think we do need other people really to come forward and say, yes, this isn't good enough. We need more awareness. And people reach out all the time, commenting on various reels on social media, on Instagram, saying, yeah, I've never heard about this. Thanks so much. I won't drink that when I'm abroad. I'll be more careful. So it's scary to think that with all this media coverage that we've had, we still haven't targeted everyone. We still haven't got that message out to everyone. So that's why, yeah, we're doing what we're doing, really.
Okay, let's talk about the campaigning, because I guess, you know, the most tragic part of this story is that it was so avoidable, and this has been going on for years. And sadly, Simone will not be the last person to die from this. You know, this is not changing at any great pace. So how have you gone about the campaigning? Where are we at, and how can we help?
So I think I started in January. I applied for the UK parliamentary petition. That came live in April. We then got sort of 10,000 signatures. It was taken to Parliament by Jim Dixon, who's the Member of Parliament in Dartford, which is very close to where Simone is from. Yeah, he took it to Parliament, and things started to sort of, the ball was rolling, so to speak. And then I got a message saying that the curriculum had changed. Somebody that we're working with, who's also campaigning, Margaret McKee, who lost her daughter, Kirsty McKee, she was contacted with a new curriculum. And it said, teaching about methanol as of September 2026, in line with the alcohol-related and drug studies that are already happening. So that was a positive win. And to be honest, it didn't seem like it was easier, actually, than I thought it would be. And that's why I thought, right, well, if we've managed to do that, let's keep going. Let's get more momentum. And I set up the Change.org petition a few months ago now, and that's to get the awareness that Australia has already got in their airports. So they've got posters on the backs of toilet cubicle doors which display the symptoms of methanol poisoning. And I think that's such an easy thing that could be rolled out internationally, just as a reminder, really, that you shouldn't be drinking anything that's in an unsealed bottle. But saying that, having spoken to another campaigner who lost her sister, so this is Chesney Emmons we're talking about, who died in Bali after drinking a bottle of gin that she got from a shop. It was a sealed bottle, and the Foreign Office advice says that if you're drinking something in a sealed bottle, it's safe, but that's not the case. So it's really trying to change the Foreign Office guidance a little bit as well, because it's not really accurate. And yeah, we all know not to take drinks from strangers, but if you're staying in a hostel or hotel even, and it's happened in five-star hotels too, they're not really strangers. They're employees. They shouldn't be serving you anything that you'd assume would be dodgy. But yeah, it's just like you can't trust anyone really. So yeah, it's about making small changes to the Foreign Office guidance to make it crystal clear that you shouldn't be taking any risks with cocktails, spirits in countries that you're not familiar with. But it's happened very close to home, places like Zante, Turkey. They had a couple of outbreaks earlier on this year. Yeah, it's pretty widespread, and I think the problem is people don't talk about it. And it's only since seeing the comments on the reels that I can actually understand where it's happening, who it's happening to, why it's not in the media. So it is scary when you see the true extent of it.
I didn't know that, and I always assumed this is happening in the poorer countries that need to replace ethanol with methanol. I had no idea what was going on in Europe. It's a much broader problem than perhaps we first thought.
Do you know what I actually saw as well? There was an article that came out by the Metro the other day, and Glen's vodka, I don't know if you know it, it's quite a cheap brand in the UK of vodka. Students generally drink that, and that had isopropyl alcohol in it as of like last week. So they were trying to recall it, and it's just incredible. But I think, I suppose what I've noticed is that in the UK and probably a lot of other countries, rubbing alcohol and things like that are generally made to taste awful, which is why if it was put into something like Glen's vodka, you would probably pick up on it and be like, oh, I'm not going to drink that. But obviously in other countries like Asia and other countries, they may not be putting that horrible taste in. So you're not necessarily going to pick up on it if they're using industrial methanol. You're not going to know where you would know at home. So I mean, maybe if we can't regulate their alcohol, we can regulate the methanol. I don't know. But it's just something to be mindful of that, yeah, in the UK it's happening too.
You're obviously focusing on England and Australia. They are two different countries on different sides of the world. Have they both sort of played ball with you? Have they both been as responsive to try and spread this and get it? You mentioned getting taught in schools and airports. Are they both equally helpful?
I think so. The airport thing here has been happening ever since that methanol poisoning outbreak in November. Mm-hmm. So I don't think those posters have moved, but we're hoping that those posters will remain in situ for good. And that's kind of why that part of the petition is running, just so that that continues. And to get it into schools would be great. I'm having meeting with a minister for education in Queensland next week. So we'll see what he thinks. But I think it's the only way. We need some scare tactics for kids when they're young so that they think about it more. It's kind of like those drink driving videos that we used to watch on the TV when we were kids, where you think, oh my God, I'm never driving. What was it? Like, if you hit me at 30, there's a...
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah, it's awful.
God.
There's a 70% chance I'll live. If you hit me at 40, 70% chance I'll die. So I remember the statistics now, sort of 20 years on, and that's kind of what we need. A third of people with methanol poisoning unfortunately die. 71% of methanol poisoning cases happen in Asia. That they're the kind of statistics that I think we need to sort of start talking about. In Vietnam, they're putting the duty on spirits from 65% to 90% over the next few years. So we're going to start seeing more and more counterfeit alcohol circulating around Southeast Asia, which is, we're going to start seeing this more and more.
Terrifying, isn't it? I always thought, taxing alcohol is great and it'd be more expensive and it's less accessible, but actually it's just feeding the black market.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not going to help one bit. And there's already a lot of counterfeit alcohol in Vietnam. So
Oh my gosh, it's terrifying. I'm sure that a lot of the work you're doing since November has been as a way of leaving a legacy for Simone, so that some good can come from this tragic event, and we can sort of keep her alive through the storytelling and the campaign. How would you like her to be remembered?
Oh, I really don't like this question because it's a lot of pressure, and I feel like whenever I do a little bit about her, it's never perfect. But she just had a real zest for life, and she was a really good friend to so many people. I mean, people were contacting me afterwards, sort of saying she was my best friend, and I'm like, no, she was mine. And she was
Yeah.
obviously very, very close to a lot of people, and she did make people feel like they were the most important person. She just had a lot of time for a lot of different people, and she was just the best friend that I ever could have hoped for. I won't ever meet anyone like that again. She was just so good at listening, and I talk absolute rubbish sometimes, and she just puts up with it, and she'd say, I think we've got to reframe this, think about this differently. She sort of acted as my sort of reasoning. She could just work things out for me, and I'm having to do a lot of sort of internal work now to try and work these problems out for myself. But yeah, she'll be missed. She's missed by so many people, and she would be doing this for me had it been me. So
Oh, I think that's a fitting tribute, Bethany. You didn't sell her short at all. Well, I want to say thank you. I know it's not difficult talking about this. This was never a path or a message that you thought you would ever have to share in your life, and I'm sorry that's what's brought us together. But thank you for doing what you're doing. You survived the methanol poisoning, and you are a living example of trying to save other people's lives. And there's nothing more noble or honourable that you can do than that, particularly in Simone's name. So thank you very much. We're going to leave in the show notes all sorts of ways that we can find your message and spread your message. And yeah, thank you for spending your morning with me.
thank you so much.
If you're questioning your relationship with booze, you're struggling to moderate, or your hangovers are causing anxiety, it might be time to reach out for some support.
Yeah, just talk to a mate about how you're feeling, contact a local doctor, find an AA or sobriety group. Vic's got one.
Yeah, just head to www.cuppa.community.
Remember, if you're questioning yourself, it might be time to seek support.
Even though this journey can be awkward, it is definitely worth it. And if you've enjoyed the Sober Awkward podcast, don't forget to review it, rate it, and share it with your mates.
Do they have to share it with their mates?
Yeah, of course they do. I'm not doing this for nothing, Hamish. Bloody hell.
How do they share it?
I don't know, just write it on the... So, as you probably know, my comedy memoir, 1,000 Wasted Sundays, is officially out. All my magnificent fuck-uppery in one awkward hit. If you'd like to get your hands on a copy, it's now available from all good bookstores.
We always say all good bookstores, don't we?
Yeah.
Are there bad
No,
bookstores?
it's probably ones with moody sellers.
Oh yeah, really
Yeah.
depressed librarian folk.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
yeah. So there are probably some, but we're only storing it in the good ones.
It's only made it into the goodies.
You can also get it from all good online retailers. The print version and ebook are out now, and the audiobook will be available in March. I've been writing my memoir for 5 years. It will make you laugh, cry and cringe, and hopefully inspire a few people to reconsider their relationship with booze. If you love the podcast, then I think you'll love the book, even if I do say so myself. Hamish has read it. What did you think?
I feel like I know a little bit too much about you now, to be honest, Vic. Look, I really loved it. It was hilarious and surprisingly moving, but I feel like I've seen you naked in a literary sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's worrying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From an emotional point of view, seriously,
It wobbled my teeny weeny wooden heart, Vic.
Okay.
My teeny little wooden heart.
Well, his
Pinocchio.
his wooden heart is broken. Anyway, so if you do manage to get your filthy mitts on a copy, please do me a favour and head to goodreads.com and give me a review. Doing that will help me get it out there to those that need a bit of sober support. So there you have it. My story, unwanted warts and all. Come and get awkward with me.
Not to be too demanding or anything, but seriously, go and buy it
Yeah,
now.
go and buy it. Go and buy it right now.
Yeah, don't just tell your friends, buy it, and then buy your friends one or two.
Yeah, don't give them a copy. Buy it, yeah.
And you know what? Don't be careful where you store it. If you lose it, you can always buy another 5.
Buy another one.
Yeah.